Hey writers, you're listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast, where we bring you insights and inspiration for growing your self-publishing business. We're your hosts. I'm Laura, Author Engagement Manager at Kobo Writing Life.
And I'm Rachel, also Author Engagement Manager at Kobo Writing Life. Today, we spoke to romance author Bal Khabra. Bal is a Canadian writer, romance enthusiast, and book lover. Before she decided to jump into the romance pool, she spent her time gushing about books on social media. When inspiration strikes, she is found filling her notes app with ideas for romance novels.
We talked to Bal about getting her start as an indie author, how she uses social media to reach her readers, and how she fell in love with the romance genre.
We had such a fun time talking about. We think you're really going to enjoy.
We're here today with hockey romance author Bal Khabra. Bal, can you kick us off by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Bal, and I'm a hockey romance author, which I think is pretty on brand for me as a Canadian. So I just write hockey romance. It's set in college, which I think makes it a little bit more fun. I am 24 years old, and I had no idea I would even jump into writing, so I kind of just pivoted towards this area. I live in Vancouver. And that's about it.
Well, like you said, you weren't really sure you were going to be a writer, and you kind of started off in this space as a romance reader and reviewer. And what kind of made you take the jump from reading and reviewing other people's romance to writing your own?
Yeah, so it started off really weird because I definitely wasn't a reader. I didn't read any of the big franchises like Harry Potter. I watched them, but I never actually read them. I was on Wattpad when I was about in my teenage years when I was 15, and that kind of got me into romance books. And then I kind of took a little break, and then when COVID hit, I had nothing to do. I was in my last semester of university, and we have a Vancouver library here. It's pretty big, and it has all these great books. So I picked up a romance book, and I read the first one. I believe it was a Abby Jimenez book, and I was obsessed. I was hooked. I probably, if I go back on my Goodreads, I read about 150 romance books a year and nothing else, no other genre. So, and then at the end of that year, I was kind of I think I can do this. So I kind of just wrote up a random draft, and I discussed with my friends who were very supportive. So it was kind of fun, bouncing off those ideas and already having an idea of how a romance book is written or how it goes usually in the plot wise. So it was kind of fun, and it kind of came naturally to me.
Do you find it kind of weird now being on the opposite side of the book space, going from reading so much romance to being somebody that is being read?
Yeah, it kind of makes me sad that I don't read as much as I used to, because I'm kind of busy just editing these, and it's hard to come out of that and go into another person's book. But as a reviewer, I was mostly on Twitter. I was really into the whole Twitter book reviews. And it was nice to connect with readers. But once you become an author yourself, it's hard to feel that connection because you feel you're in a different realm. And I don't want to obviously invade any reader spaces. I know some people have some thoughts about that. So I kind of stick to Instagram now. But it's really interesting to see both sides. And I think it is helpful as well, just in my own writing journey. And I know what people like and what I liked. And I kind of can just add that into my own books.
Yeah, let's talk about social media a little bit. How has your approach to social media changed as you transition from being kind of the reader, reviewer to a writer? Does social media play a big part in your marketing plan now? I know you went a little viral on TikTok. So what has that been like?
Yeah, it definitely, I always say I love TikTok and the way that it helps people's careers. I think it's made so many, and I'm so glad. I wouldn't have read half the books that I have if it wasn't for TikTok. So being able to be a part of that and marketing my own book, I think TikTok was a huge help. I was exclusively marketing on TikTok. I ignored my Instagram for a long time, but when I realized I could just utilize both, and the communities are very different. I find myself having a more of a safe space on Instagram. I feel people are just a lot sweeter there, and there's readers who are invested in your books and the series. So I kind of like that. TikTok is fun in the way you can make little memes and little funny audios. But yeah, social media in general was huge it was the only marketing that I did. I just made TikToks 24/7. And then I kind of just hopped over to make actual posts on Instagram now recently. But yeah, I think TikTok was great. And I think social media definitely helped me get the word on my book out.
As somebody who is a compulsive TikTok scroller, but finds making TikToks incredibly daunting, do you have any advice for other authors who really want to increase their social media presence, but like me, are terrified of the app?
Yeah, I think as somebody who was also a compulsive TikTok scroller, I actually recently took, like, I banned myself from going on TikTok. I turned my phone on grayscale and I did not use TikTok. But when I was on the app, I kind of, like, I picked up on what was getting a lot of traction. It was kind of like those quote videos that kind of like hook you in. So either you have like one, I usually use like a banter between my two main characters. Like you use one, like a sassy comment from the girl, and then you have the guy reply back with like a fun audio. And I think those do so well. Like those are what I mainly post anyway. So if you have like a fun quote that you know would get people's attention and would get your own attention, if you look at it from a reader's point of view, those do the best. And I like making them because they're really simple. You just need two pictures and copy paste the quote and it works great.
It's a lot. It can be a lot more simple than what some TikToks will lead you to believe.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of mentioned that, like, you understand that there are certain spaces that are meant for readers that you no longer really want to, like, I don't want to say the word invade because that feels really aggressive, but you no longer want to partake in as an author. So do you still use social media to connect with your readers?
Yes, I don't use, so I recently deleted Twitter because I just wasn't going on it as much. I think Instagram was a little bit more fun for me and it gave me like a better way to connect with readers. I just answered some DMs because it's super fun to have people like send you screenshots of like something that they liked or like their reactions as they're reading your book. So I find it super fun to do. And even if they like post stories, reposting those stories, I find that like really nice and interactive with them or in the comments. So I definitely have like delved way more into talking to readers as I go through it. And some of the people who I used to talk to on Twitter are on my Instagram account now. So it's kind of fun. They can see my growth and I kind of get to like connect with them as I was before in their space.
Yeah, that's awesome. I feel like jumping ship from Twitter is becoming a more and more popular trend among social media. You mentioned that Wattpad was a really big, I don't know, something that really drew you into romance as the genre. I'm curious, what drew you to hockey romance specifically?
Yeah, I think that was a mix of obviously growing up in Canada, you kind of can't escape hockey. Like all my teachers, I remember, like I especially remember my fifth grade teacher. He was obsessed with hockey, and we would play hockey like we would skip all the units in PE, and we'd play hockey 24/7. So I think definitely the fact that I grew up in Canada, as well as I picked up one of I think it was Elle Kennedy's book, The Deal. I loved it so much. Like I just love the whole found family aspect of it, and like having to like it's like a bunch of friends in one house. Like it's super fun. And I grew up with two older siblings, so I watched a lot of TV shows like the 2000s TV shows like The OC or One Tree Hill or Gossip Girl. Like those were it. Like I loved the whole like friendship dynamic, and I think being able to like put that into a hockey romance, being a Canadian, and then adding the college aspect, those two like mixed so well for me, and it was so easy to write.
You mentioned in your bio that your writing process kind of starts in the notes app of your phone. Can you give us some insight into the process? How do you go from notes to your finished novel?
Yeah, it's super chaotic. Like if you were to see my notes, like my friend who is very organized and she uses like Notion, she saw my notes app and she's like, I cannot do this. You're gonna give me like a mental, like I can't. It's everywhere. Like I kind of, if I think of an idea, it'll just be one sentence in a notes app that just says book. Like I don't even know what book it's for. I kind of just like throw it in there. But recently, what I've been getting better at is actually putting proper titles. So I have like book 1, 2, 3, 4, and I kind of go to each one and then just add what I want. And I have downloaded Notion. It's kind of a learning curve. It's really like it's an organization app, so it really helps if you're plotting a book. But I don't know why. I just can't get into it. So I kind of have like scenes in my notes and I move them over to Google Docs and I like flesh them out completely to make an actual chapter. So I kind of just like pick and choose what I want from what I threw in my notes app.
That's really cool. Your method of organization reminds me of mine, which stresses Laura out. Rather than aggressive notes, it's aggressive tabs, but tabs open on Google. But yeah, no, I feel it. Do you have any ideas that like in the moment, whether perhaps in like a sleep-addled state, you like wrote something down and thought it was brilliant, and then you go back to it and just have no idea what you were talking about?
Yeah, I think because I used to not write actual titles on my notes, that was like me all the time. Like I remember when I was writing Collide, there was one sentence that I wrote, and I was like, oh my God, this is so good. But I have no idea where it would fit or like how it would even work in the book at all. So I don't know where I came up with that idea. But I kind of sometimes what I do is I keep certain like quotes or like little paragraphs I write, and I keep them for like future books just in case like that idea actually makes sense one day. It doesn't right now, but hopefully. Yeah, it's just a bunch of stuff that I need to figure out.
I love that. We really want to talk to you about your publishing journey because it's a little unconventional, if you will, because you started out as an indie author. Can you kind of let us know how your publishing journey went, how it went from publishing your own book to getting picked up by a publisher?
It was quite fast. I do think I had like no expectations because I it wasn't like I was young and I was kind of like, oh, like I want to be an author really bad. I was kind of just doing my degree and trying to figure out where to go from there. And then I wrote a book. So it kind of so I wrote my like I did indie and Amazon. So KDP is really, really good to indie authors. I actually it comes with its hiccups, of course, but I think it's really accessible. And I think I really love that about it, especially when it comes to Kindle Unlimited. So I knew all that. Like I kind of was writing notes as I went on how to like indie publish. I actually wanted to do a little like blog on my website to help people who wanted to do self-publishing because I think it is pretty straightforward once you get a hang of it. And I did have a pretty good hang of it. So I was ready to honestly do this for the next book if I had to do that. But when like my agent, Jessica reached out to me when I was in like a loop of whether I was going to be self or like indie published or traditional. I didn't know honestly which one I wanted to be because I really liked indie. Like it was kind of you have all the control, you kind of just like get to do what you want. But the only barrier that I had was getting my books into actual stores. So that was the thing that kind of drove me to go pursue the traditional path. And yeah, with my agent's help, we landed on Berkeley. I remember it probably took like from her messaging me. So my book released a week later, she messaged me. A week later, we had the Berkeley deal. So it happened like really within like 2 weeks. And then it was a bunch of waiting and then not being able to tell anybody first. But it was a learning curve. It was very interesting to see how things work and like where all the rights are going and who we're giving the rights to, especially because it is going to be translated in a few different languages. So it's very interesting to see how the different publishing houses work. I'm like reading all the contracts because I'm not a contract girl. Like I was like on ChatGPT, like explain this to me. I don't know what this means, but
That's very
yeah,
relatable.
I know. Like it was literally I was like every single like paragraph I would just copy paste it and ask them. But I learned a lot, and I think I'm still obviously learning. Probably haven't even hit like any like I just hit the tip of the iceberg right now. So yeah, it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be. It was kind of a little bit of a smooth transition, I'd say. Like I was like hoping that would be the case, that I would get picked up traditionally so I could see my book in stores. And then when it happened, and I believe it was October, and then I think I announced it in January. So I had a few like months to understand how it is and like go through a little bit of editing for Collide before they announced it and put it up for pre-order and everything.
Is there anything you learned during the indie publishing process that you feel like you've brought with you to traditional publishing?
Yeah, I think indie publishing tells you to trust yourself. So when you're writing, when you're an indie writer, you have yourself to talk to and to bounce ideas off of. It's kind of a very isolating process, but in a way, it does help you realize that like if this book, people actually did like this book, that means you do know what you're kind of doing, right? So when you're in like a traditional space with editors and all that, and you think a good idea is good, and they think like, oh, maybe change it like this, you can kind of understand that, oh, like give them an explanation of why you think this could work. And they're really collaborative. They're not at all like, oh, you have to do this our way. They're very much like, what do you think? I think this. So it's nice to be able to have that opinion because you kind of, I still have imposter syndrome, but you kind of trust yourself a little bit because you've done it yourself. So it's kind of nice in that way where you can collaborate with somebody else and make your own idea a little bit better.
I love that learning how to trust yourself by publishing yourself and like believing that your book is, good enough to publish and then standing by it. I'm really curious about that editorial process you mentioned, though, from going from a book that you published yourself and then going through the collaborative process of editing it to be traditionally published. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I realized there was a lot of edits that I didn't catch. I I went through three editors. It's one thing about indie that I was happy to let go was outsourcing my editing. Oh my God, it's the most difficult thing to find a really good editor. And I went through three editors. They were pretty good, but obviously there's always like a few stragglers and a few things that just didn't make sense. I remember my editor would post like, what do you mean? Like, and or they would be like, what day is it? Like in this chapter. And I was like, I don't know either. Like I can't tell you. Because I wrote it was Thursday the chapter before and it's like suddenly Wednesday. So it's difficult. That part wasn't difficult. I mean, it was kind of it was fun to see the stuff that I missed and like them like pointing it out, like, what are you talking about? So it was humbling in the way that I'm like, okay, I thought this indie version was like, oh, it's so good, but I see them pointing out each chapter like, oh, I misspelled something, or I this could be written better. I think it really helps become like just better at writing. I feel it in myself right now as I'm actually drafting book two. So I feel myself like really understanding how to actually write a well-rounded story with the help of these editors.
Let's talk about Collide a little bit, which is your hockey romance, which is being, I guess we can say like re-released as a traditionally published book on May 14th. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about Collide?
Yeah, so Collide is about a college student, Summer Preston, who is doing her psychology degree and wants to get into the master's program. However, she gets an ultimatum from her professor who tells her that she has to do a thesis on a sport, and she has to pick one. However, when her advisor tells her that she has to pick hockey and that she's already contacted the coach and everything, she hates hockey. First of all, I guess I should make that clear. But she has to do a research project with a hockey player. So she gets teamed up with Aiden Crawford, who's the captain of the hockey team, who really doesn't want to help her with this project at first. But they kind of get forced together to work on this, and through that, they have a little few bumps in the road. There's a lot of banter. There's a lot of like witty statements in there, and a little bit of, I don't like to call it enemies to lovers, but I'll say it's a bit of like a dislike to love trope that goes on. And yeah, it's just like a fun, we see like found family. There's a bit of a like research partners, forced proximity bit in there, and the whole black cat and golden retriever dynamic.
I'm really curious where you came up with the idea for Collide, because like a psych major being forced to work with a hockey player on a master's thesis isn't really your traditional sports romance setup. I'm really curious where the inspiration came from.
Yeah, so I think I was telling you guys earlier, I came up, like I was in my last semester of university and I took the easiest courses last semester because I finished all the hard ones. And my last course was sports psychology. And that's actually what Summer is like doing her master's in. So I was really interested in that. I actually genuinely thought I was going to end up being a sports psychologist. That's like the route I was leaning towards. And I thought that was like a perfect way to blend in what I already knew about psychology myself, because that's the degree I did do, and having it blend into hockey, which is something else I also know about. And it was kind of a nice like segue, and it kind of fit perfectly for her to have to do the thesis in a sport like hockey. So it just meshed together really well.
If you were to do your thesis on sports psychology, would you have chosen hockey?
That's actually a great question. Honestly, maybe I would have. Now that I've written this, I'd love that. Honestly, I think it could be fun.
Do you have any advice for romance writers, or maybe, I guess, aspiring romance writers about writing banter? Because you do a good job with like Aiden and Summer's banter. But I could see how it would be intimidating maybe for a new author coming into it.
Yeah, that's true. I have friends who are obviously great writers, but they're always like, oh, I struggle with banter. And like I guess I have too many conversations in my head or something. And I think it helps that I have siblings. And you have that automatic banter, or like not like just a back and forth with them at all times. So you got to be like quick with it, you know. You got to have like comebacks ready in your head. And I think that's the way it kind of just like when I'm writing a story, I'm like obviously saying it was like speaking the dialogue in my own head. And you kind of just got to write it like you can't wait for it to be like perfect and just like each word or like in the sentence has to be good. You just keep going back and forth, and then by the end when you look at it, it actually ends up not being that bad, and you can edit it and parse it however you want. So yeah, honestly, just write the dialogue, just like throw it onto the page and then just parse it from there.
Do you ever have to read your dialogue out loud or do like a back and forth with somebody else reading another, like the other part to get that banter perfect and like the rhythm down? Or are you pretty good at doing it in your head?
I think one thing that I will say that I am like a strong writer in would be the dialogue. I did get that like when I first wrote this, that was one of the first things an editor said to me. And I guess I kind of like internalized that. And I was like, okay, I'm good at that, and kind of helped a little bit more. I haven't said it out loud. I think I wonder how that would work. Honestly, I might try that now, but I'm pretty good at talking to myself. I can just like make like I can have the voices in my head, and it helps with the dialogue.
It's all that OC. It's the Seth and Summer that is just like sitting in your brain.
That's actually exactly where the name Summer came from. It came from Summer from the OC.
I love that. That's a great origin story. I also feel like part of being a writer is you have to be able to sit alone and talk to yourself. So it's good that you've got that down already. One of the things that we wanted to talk about was some of the potentially heavier subjects in the book. So no spoilers, but there's some death and grief and some family issues that kind of play a role in this novel and in shaping the two characters, Aiden and Summer. How did you incorporate, or how did you handle incorporating such a heavy subject with like the lightheartedness of the rest of the book?
Yeah, I was trying to balance keeping it pretty light because it is a rom-com at the end of the day. I don't want people to like if you're reaching for a rom-com, you're reaching for a good time. You're not reaching to like cry or, you know. So I kind of wanted to delve into it in a way where it wasn't too much into the grief aspect. And I do understand, I do read books like that as well. And that's what I particularly go for, is to read the journey through grief or a character's emotional arc. I think I kept it purposefully a little less in detail, and I wanted it to be that way because of like just the nature of the genre. But I didn't want to obviously just skip over the fact and make it seem like it wasn't a big deal. So I did incorporate it in a way where it was a reason for the two characters to kind of get closer together. It brought that like emotional aspect into the book. So in that way, I kind of utilized that to my advantage to keep the story still going in a positive way, but using the negatives to help it, like a little bit of a catalyst to help the characters kind of grow as individuals and together in their relationship as well.
Did you ever find striking that balance challenging, that you wanted to put in too many emotional layers that kind of made it feel less like a rom-com and more like an emotional romance novel?
Yeah, I find myself doing that right now, actually, when I'm drafting this book. And as well with Collide, it was a little bit easier because I was focusing more on like the little friendship dynamics and like just the bantering and all that. It was kind of all lighthearted, but I didn't want to just skip over it. So I did try to keep it at a limit. And I think I didn't really go much like too emotional or in depth where somebody would be like crying reading the book. So I did keep it lighthearted. And I think the balance it was a little bit hard to not go all the way in the story, just in case you don't want people to feel like you skimmed over it. But yeah, I think that's honestly, you got to find that balance with a rom-com.
And you've mentioned that you've incorporated a lot of what you know into the story, the sports psychology, the hockey of it all, but you also incorporated some of your South Asian background through the character of Summer. And I'm curious what it was like bringing that part of yourself to the novel, but also, did you intend to make me crave chai and South Asian cuisine throughout the entirety of the book? Because that is something that happened.
Yeah, I'm glad that happened because it was purposeful. I personally, it's funny though, it's personally because I don't drink chai. My mom is like a lover. She's addicted to it. I make it for her. She comes from work, I'll make it for her, and that's what she'll have. But I can't drink it because I'm like, I don't want to get addicted. I know it's really good. So I kind of put that.
I have it every night. So like it is addicting. It is my nighttime routine.
Exactly. It's just nice. It's like a little self-care routine. So I wanted Summer to have something like that. And with my like own background, I hadn't seen. I wouldn't say, oh, like I'm adding a culture into these books. I have seen culture, but I think it would have been nice to see a main character who has that kind of background, without it being the main point of the story. That's very important to me because I'm born and raised in Canada. I'm kind of like in the Western culture, but also like at home, I'll be in the like the Indian culture of it all. So I wanted it to be like a good balance, but not something that takes over Summer's own personality. Because I don't think you have to mention every 2 seconds that like, she's doing something within her culture. She can just be who she is. But I wanted to add the little aspect of like Indian food. I think I threw some in there, and then I had some the chai, obviously, that she's obsessed with. And I also loved adding another part of me that I guess I added was the Turkish dramas. And I'm obsessed with Turkish dramas, so I purposely added that in there. But yeah, it was fun adding little parts of me in there. It was easy because I knew all of that stuff. And I like that, somebody could have like these little quirks, and people also related with them. People would message me all the time. They'd be like, "What Turkish drama is she watching? Is it this one? Is it this one?" So I love that part.
Is this part of yourself that you want to continue to bring to all of your books? Or are you, I don't want to say the word like, you don't want to be pigeonholed, because I feel like that's a terrible phrase, but is this something you want to continue to explore throughout your upcoming romance books?
Yeah, I think it's honestly pretty natural the way it comes. I don't intentionally go like, "Oh, I'm putting this in because it's because of me." It just happens that way. And I think that happens with most authors. Like even if I read one of my like my friend's books and I'm like, "Oh, like that's you." Like regular readers wouldn't know that, but you do. And it's kind of a nice like little addition to the book. I think it adds something to it. But yeah, I think I will just naturally as just a person who's writing. It's just coming out of my head. It probably will go in there. But yeah, it's fun adding those like little things that I know people might relate to, or people who are in the same like realm. So it's just fun adding those.
And which Turkish drama is she watching?
She's watching. So I don't want to butcher the pronunciation, but I'll say what it's called in English. It's called Knock on My Door. I call it SCK because that's like the wording for it. But people guessed it. People knew what it was. I purposely didn't put the name, but I love that they could guess it. So yeah.
I love that it becomes their show together. It was very cute. And also him learning how to make the perfect chai for her was also adorable. One of the other aspects of the book that I loved was that found family that you mentioned. I really enjoyed reading about all of Aiden's roommates. Can you give us a hint about what's coming next in the series, about book 2, and maybe who book 2 is about?
Yeah, so I wish I knew if I could say what like I have it. It's pretty much done at this point. But I'll say what it's about. It's about a hockey player and a ballerina. So I kind of have that dynamic, and it's going to be like fake dating. It's going to have all the tropes you would find in fake dating. And I kind of moved away from, no, I didn't really move away from it, but it's kind of more of exploration of the rookie career as it goes, and like him finding his way through it. And yeah, I think, yeah, I probably will. I have no idea if we can say the title or the name, but I've told a few people. So it is about Eli. I'll say that. The second book is about Eli. So
I was hoping it would be about Eli. That's very exciting.
Yeah, and yeah, that's what it would be about.
And I'm excited that it's fake dating as well. Is there another subgenre or trope that you're really excited to try writing in?
Yeah, so I have not in this series or isn't in this book per se or even series, but I love Marriage of Convenience. I'm obsessed with any book that has that in it. I have no idea why. I just love all the whole like just everything about it. I would love to write something like that. I think it would be super fun. So that genre is my favorite. But if we're going for like hockey, I'd say I'd love sticking to the whole black cat and golden retriever dynamic. It's just so fun to write. The dialogue just comes super easy to me. So I think I will incorporate that maybe to a more of a higher extent than I did for Aiden and Summer. And so yeah, I've definitely added that in the dialogue.
Is like on the flip side, is there a trope or subgenre that you look at and you're like, ooh, that seems like a really big challenge?
I'd say the first one that comes into my mind is like the accidental pregnancy tropes. That's only because I don't read them and I don't think I could do that justice just because of where I am in my own life. I don't think I have any knowledge on that. But yeah, that can't think of anything else right now, but I'd say that one.
And can you tell us a little bit about any of the romance books that you've been loving lately? Do you have any recommendations for our listeners, aka me?
Yeah, so I've been loving, I don't know if you guys heard about Liz Tomford. I love the whole Windy City series. I just read Caught Up, and I think that was Kai's book, and oh my God, I was obsessed with it. Buddy read it with one of my friends, and we were just like screaming, texting each other the whole time. But out of that series, my favorite was The Right Move. Like no one can surpass Ryan Shea. He is like the ultimate book boyfriend. So I recommend him to everyone. I even like anybody who asks. That's like the book that I always say.
I'm going to like backtrack slightly a little bit and ask you about writing hockey romance and how you strike the balance between kind of explaining how hockey works to those who don't follow the sport without like boring hockey fans. And how do you keep the hockey relatively accurate throughout the book? I always find it so fascinating.
Yeah, I think as somebody who also reads hockey romance, I do like when it's limited, even though I am a hockey fan. I don't want to, it's a fun sport, so it's kind of easy to make interesting when you're writing it. So I do like that part about it, but I do obviously even though I grew up with hockey, I always Google for accuracy because I'm like, am I even saying this right? Maybe I'm just saying this wrong my whole life. But I do find it interesting because if somebody like points it out, I think it's different for college hockey because it's a lot of like NCAA rules and they're very like not a lot of people know about them. But if you're going for like a professional hockey, you gotta understand like the Atlantic Division and like you can't have random teams versus each other. And I think that I kept that in my mind the whole time as I'm writing. But yeah, the balance is kind of putting it. I usually put like I'd say like a paragraph or two about like an actual hockey part. Just to keep like the people who do actually enjoy hockey and do enjoy maybe reading about it a little bit excited and to kind of have the character have like a full arc. I can't write a hockey romance without him actually playing hockey. So it's fun to write that, but I do like to keep it limited just because I'm reading a book for mostly the romance. The hockey is just like a little part of it. So I like to incorporate it. I think it's very important, but I don't think I would like write an entire chapter about just them playing hockey.
Yeah, you don't need to include a whole paragraph on what offside means.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I'd be able to explain it anyway. So
Anytime, I know this is a huge tangent, but anytime somebody tries to explain offside, I just remember that scene in Bend It Like Beckham where the dad is explaining it with the condiments, which is the best way to explain any rule. But again, tangent. You mentioned you Google things to see if they're correct in hockey. What was it like writing in the ballet world for your second book? I'm so curious. Did you have to do a lot of research?
So much Googling. Like I didn't know anything about ballet. I just knew it was like really pretty and I liked the idea of it or like the aesthetics. But when you research it, it is really like it's tough. It's hard work. Like so now I get all these recommendations. Like if I'm on TikTok or like Instagram, I have like all this ballerina stuff. And I've been watching, I think a really good way to get some research, especially we're lucky now with how vlogs work. I follow this ballerina. I can't think of her name right now, but I think it's Luna, but she has like a mixed videos about her ballet journey. And like I picked up on a lot of like terms and a lot of stuff she uses. So I use that for my research. And just like the words, because a lot of French words. So I kind of picked up on that and just understanding that because I don't want to just like gloss over the fact that, oh, like she's a ballerina. It's a hard, difficult sport and I want to incorporate that into it. So it was a lot of researching and a lot of finding the right words. And even as I'm editing now, I realize like, oh, that's like the completely incorrect word to use. So I feel like I know a lot more about it than I did when I started.
I will say my favorite ballet corner of the internet is point shoe breaking in ASMR on TikTok.
Yeah, I like to add that. And I've seen so many, oh, it's so fun. They're like using like those knives to like get it, like it's perfect. And I think I also recently just watched The Black Swan because I was like, I think it would be a disservice to write this book and not watch The Black Swan. And that provided me so much information. I was like, I'm so glad I watched this because I had so many things wrong. So it was really nice to see that, and like just like little things. Like I didn't know ballerinas like cut off their little ribbons and like burn the ends to singe them, and I was like, oh, that's a really cute detail. I'll probably add that in there.
And just to go along the lines of the 2000s media you were talking about, if you have not watched Center Stage, you
Ooh.
absolutely must.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down. I definitely have to now.
Yeah, that's just, again, I'm really good at going off on tangents on this podcast, so I'll reel it in. But
Okay,
Center Stage,
everything you've mentioned has been like, I was like, oh my God, she knows this, she knows this. I'm definitely taking that recommendation.
No, I agree with Center Stage. That's a good one.
right, and before we let you go, where can our listeners find you and your books online?
I believe everywhere it's author Bal Khabra. And yeah, that's about it.
Easy peasy. We'll include a link to all of your socials and website in our show notes. And Bal, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with us today. This has been so much fun.
Yeah, thank you guys. This is so much fun. And I feel like now I have a great recommendation, and I'll definitely go watch that. But yeah, this is so much fun. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for listening to the Kobo Writing Life podcast. If you're interested in picking up Bal's books or following her on socials, we will include links in our show notes. If you are enjoying this podcast, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. And if you're looking for more tips on growing your self-publishing business, you can find us at kobowritinglife.com, and be sure you're following us on socials. We are at Kobo Writing Life on Facebook and Twitter, and at kobo.writing.life on Instagram.
This episode was hosted by Laura Granger and Rachel Wharton, with production by Terrence Abrahams. Editing is provided by Kelly Robotham. Our theme music is composed by Tearjerker, and thanks to Bal Khabra for being a guest. If you're ready to start your publishing journey, sign up today at kobo.com/writinglife. Until next time, happy writing!